when I started struggling at 16, it was like the way I thought of it, and this is where it's wrong, and I think this is how everyone else thinks about it, is they have that tiger thing of like 97. I won the Masters. What do I do to get better? Oh, I've got to fix the club at the top from being across the line. Now from there, man, I'm going to be really good. And there's no logic. There's no logic in that. Like there's no steps to it. And so for me, it was like, oh wow, I just had a really great season, being way across the line, slinging it under, and opening really hard. Imagine if my club was on flame. Like, man, I'm gonna be the next thing.
And then you do a David Duval.
Yeah, I'll be the next David Duval. So the next thing you know, I'm spending my whole 16th year, 15th, 16th year, working on takeaway and letting the club lay off more to where it's, more down the line. And then you get, for me, I got like the driver yips. And um, it's a great way of like, I was trying to improve by saying skipping a million steps of analysis and jumping to one arbitrary thing that had no backing. So in reality, it's no one else's fault but my naivety and stupidity at the time to not be able to question things.
This conversation is with Connor Black. Connor was an exceptional junior, went on to play golf at Texas A&M. He then turned pro, coaches, and is making his way towards the tour. In this conversation, we talk about Connor's good golf, his slumps, what he wished he knew when he was younger, and how he goes about performing now. On top of all of this, Connor is a great friend and always a wonderful person to speak to. I hope you enjoy. Talk me through turning up at A&M. So you turn up at Texas A&M, golf scholar.
Yeah.
Share whoever you want to in terms of who was there with you, and then what was that like?
Yeah. When I was struggling a bit, I tried to that's when I started exploring like other interests and stuff. So because I figured that I was struggling at the time because it was a mental thing and that I was too worried about my game because I had been homeschooled for a bit in junior golf, so I felt like maybe this is just too important to me, so maybe I should try to like try other things, and if I can relax, then maybe I'll start playing good again. So it kind of felt like it was like I was broken, is what it felt like, and I was trying to like relax so that I could like not be broken whenever I play golf, which is a really good band-aid for the first like 3 months, but then it's not, it's just like you just can't really sustainably improve when you're just trying to not care. And so I showed up to A&M with that attitude. I was playing actually pretty good. I just shot a 63 in my last tournament before I went to A&M. Showed up in my class was Cameron Champ and then three others, and it was just like a blast. It's just like all the movies. College, it's um, American University. It's a lot of potential distraction. You could have fun at any time of the day. But the good thing about being on a golf team is you have like structure, so you had to have morning workouts and whatnot. So
Yeah, what was the daily structure?
yeah. So there'd be like so like you get there, they have this thing like for a week where you kind of just have fun for a week. So you get there a week early, and then after you get all of that like out of your system of okay, oh, I'm college, yeah. Then for the golf team, at least, like you kind of like start. So you'd have 6 a.m. workouts Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Tuesday, Thursdays were for running if you were punished, which we were punished a lot for lots of different things. And those would be at 5 a.m. So Tuesdays
Oh,
and Thursdays
wow.
were often the worst ones. And funny story, I went back once I started playing again. I went back and was practicing at the facility, and one of the kids on the team now said like, "Oh, you're Connor," and I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Is it true? Did you used to stay up all night and wait for the 5 a.m. so you wouldn't miss it?" And I was like, "Yes, this is
Oh,
true." So
my.
I have a reputation that I would just stay up all night and wait for my 5 a.m. Running because I did. Because if you missed 5 a.m. running, like you're almost not going to be on the team anymore. So
What was the punishment for? Was it missing stuff?
it's all sorts of things. Either someone did something stupid, and then the whole team would pay punishment as a way to discourage this type of behavior. That was pretty common. Um, Another one would be he had this thing called lapsing credits. So he defined a bunch of our coach defined a bunch of performance settings or performance outcomes that would lead to laps and some that lead to credits. And with credits, you get a bunch of Pro V1s, and with laps, you wake up at 4:30 and go to Kyle Field and run stadiums. And it would be stuff like if you finish your last three holes over par, lap. If whatever it is. So some people would get up to like 100 laps, because like you would aggregate it for a while, and then you'd have to pay it off over a couple weeks because you can't do that all at once. But yeah, it was really fun. The way that college golf works is you have a schedule in the fall. There's 2 semesters. We work on a semester schedule in the United States. So in the fall semester, you maybe have like 6 events that you go to, 7 events, and they'll be everywhere. And you'll the way a golf team typically works is they're about like 10 to 13 people. Um, and you have these intra squad tournaments against each other before each tournament. So the good thing about college golf is like it is really competitive based. Like you're playing a ton. So your week before school starts, or the week starts school starts, or whatever the details are. You'll play a 54-hole tournament against each other, and that's pretty good because like on that team we had Cameron Champ, we had Audrey Arnaus, Johannes Veerman would play some of the qualifiers sometimes. He was a 5th-year senior though at the time, so he wasn't. He was on our team, but he wasn't like competing. And then if you finish top 2 in that tournament, you would earn your place at the tournament, and then the coach would pick 3 at his discretion. So if you finish third and you finish third the entire semester and you don't get picked, you basically have nothing to complain about because you knew the rules just as everyone else did. Finish top 2, you get it. You're third, then you're not guaranteed any spot. So I actually tied for first in my first qualifier, and then I have to caveat this with Cameron was out with a back injury, so he wasn't playing in that qualifier. And we went off to Princeton, and it was the first event. Flew out private jet to Princeton, played Baltusrol, played Pine Valley. It was like, wow, this is cool. And that was my first week. And then after that, it was not. It was not that.
Didn't qualify after that.
Yeah, I was pretty peaked at that point. I didn't realize that was. I thought that was the entire college experience.
So
But yeah,
you just retired from college golf week 3. Yeah, I'm done.
after 1 week, yeah. So no, it was good. Yeah, in my time at A&M, we played at. I was able to travel to Hawaii twice, Ireland once because Notre Dame is quite wealthy and they hosted a tournament in Ireland. And but my golf was not. I played decent the first fall, struggled in the spring. Played decent the second fall, struggled in the spring, and it was just not. I couldn't get anything going, and I kept trying to relax more as a way to play better because I was convinced it was still mental, and I'd kind of lost touch with the fact that that performance, in practice and progressing in that way would in turn probably help me relax a bit more with my game as well. And I just thought, yeah, so yeah, that's kind of what led me to the end of college. I quit golf for a year and then decided, okay, well, I got to get something else out of my golf because I just sacrificed my whole life. It felt like to golf, and I can't be done at 21 and or 22. And that's when I went to the UK on a golf scholarship to go meet Will. Apparently, that's where I was when you met me.
So I think there's 2 things, because really what I'd like to get out of this is you're obviously a phenomenal golfer, and then you had this dip down for a few years, and now you're actually on a point where you're playing some great golf, and you're starting to then move forward, which we need to get to. I want to get onto that part of the journey.
That's the more interesting part, actually.
Yeah. But one thing I really do need to ask you around college is, you've listed some of the people that you played with in college who are seriously successful. Looking back, what's the difference week to week or in what they were doing, which is the ones that were successful versus?
I think I'm not. So I'm 27 years old, so I'm definitely not like an old person, but at the same time, to like a 15-year-old listening, if they're a junior golfer, I am an old person.
You're really old,
So,
Connor. Yeah.
and even an 18-year-old freshman in college, I am an old person. So it's like, I feel like I do have quite a bit of perspective on this because at the time, like if you take a week from the fall of 2014, I'll tell you what was going on. Johannes Veerman had quit golf. He was just studying to be a doctor. Cameron Champ couldn't practice any because he had a lower back pain. So, and he was actually given, the people on the team were kind of giving him a hard time because he wasn't doing the workouts because he had a lower back issue. And we were all stupid and assumed like maybe it wasn't as bad as of an issue as it actually was. And so especially the older kids on the team would be more like, "Come on, Cameron, why are you not working out with us?" Um, and and so I'm sure that wasn't a great time for him, right? Because he went off to college. He's on a team with guys that were asking him like kind of somewhat pressuring him to want to work out whenever his doctor's like, "Don't work out, your low back or load your spine with like barbells and whatever." And he wasn't playing. And then Scotty Scheffler's out at UT. He was obviously tearing it up already. And this was on my team. Audrey Arnaus, he wasn't playing that well. He couldn't hit driver off of most tees because he was feeling so just uncomfortable with it. And our coach was constantly like having to tell him that you'll never be a great golfer if you can't step up and rip driver. And yeah, that's where everyone was. And week to week, it was just like probably anyone that you guys know. Again, Johannes was just studying and doing nothing. And then as far as Audrey, he would just do our team practices. To his credit, he always searched outside of our team structure quite hard for finding something that would help his game. He had his team back in Barcelona from the Spanish Federation, and so he was always doing work. I do remember that was kind of planned and outside of our team stuff. Cameron had Sean Foley, so Sean would, I think, help him kind of um, guide the whole process. And Sean was really worried about his health at the time, I think. So he was very like adamant about that. Cameron's so much talent that like he could not practice for a year and still play a season and win once on the PGA Tour every season.
Well, I mean, we'd take it, wouldn't we?
Yeah, that's incredible. He is like out of everyone I've ever played with, he and Nicolai Hogard, I didn't play with him, but caddied with him, were the two most talented people I think I've ever seen. Like just unreal.
What I get from that is they didn't work harder than everyone else, but they were smarter. They made better
Yeah, I
decisions.
think at the time Audrey did do a lot of reps, so he did work harder than everyone else in the gym. He worked harder. He would practice longer, and he was still 20 or 21 years old. So I don't think he had learned as much about practicing smarter, but he definitely was constantly thinking about how he could do that better, for sure. So we had Scott Fawcett, who created the decade system. We had him. He's an alumni. He came to us right when he made the system and did this huge presentation. And I remember the only one that really bought into it that week was Audrey. And afterwards, Audrey spent like 3 hours with him hitting balls into a net with his one swing thought for like 100 balls to get a shot pattern on TrackMan. And then Scott was like, "Okay, now we'll put this thing on this course, and then we're gonna find out." And then he was
Nice.
going through everything. So like
Cool.
Audrey was that type of person. So Audrey was just gonna be really good no matter what. He was gonna figure out a way. But yeah, at the time it wasn't like he was practicing super incredibly intelligently. It was just like he was putting in more effort and looking more, I think, than everyone else was. More of the other people that didn't make it seemed to be more content with just doing the team stuff and going out and playing a match against their team, and then going to a party as soon as that match was over. And Audrey he did all of those things as well, but he also seemed to be adding some extra things in.
And I think this is something we've talked about is like that 1%, 2% change week over week doesn't look like much.
Oh,
And then
it's
2, 3 years
huge.
down the line, it's like, whoa,
Oh my God. Yeah.
this guy, that
Yeah.
was unreal. Yeah, yeah. But you don't notice it, do you? Because you're just like, oh, just hit a few
No,
extra balls.
no.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
even like I remember Audrey one tournament, um, one qualifier. Like these are the things I try to tell my juniors that I teach because they'll be brand new to junior golf and they'll shoot a 90 and they'll come back and they're like so embarrassed. They feel so frustrated. They can't believe it. They almost don't want to tell me their score. And then I'm like, Johannes, his final college golf tournament, granted, like he he qualified for that final tournament shooting 15 under at traditions for 3 rounds, so that's really good, right? But his last round, he shot a 90. His last round of college golf, and I'm like, I always say like golf is just really hard. So like, if he's a European Tour winner and his last round of college golf at 22 years old was a 90 in a tournament, then and you're just starting, then what's like? Don't be embarrassed about that. There's nothing to be embarrassed about.
It's the same with the university guys here. And I think the most important metrics are stroke average and what's your lowest. I don't really care about your highest. Like, if you keep shooting high scores, then that obviously is going to affect the average. But it doesn't matter if you shoot 90 as long as your average is 70 or below and you're capable of shooting 6 under.
That's a great point because I did a little quick study from Tiger Woods' seasons from like 97 and 2000 or 97 and 99, and there's a whole bunch. He shot a whole bunch of scores at 77 and higher, a whole bunch.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's like just something that like, and I sent it to Johannes one day earlier this spring because he shot like a 77 in a tournament, and I said, like, by the way, like Tiger Woods 97 and 2000 shot like this many 77s and higher. Like, don't beat yourself up. And then he also said, well, he also won like 3 majors, and
He did it right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll send you as well. I did for the team. I plotted LPGA and PGA stroke average versus finish position this year, and you always get the same S curve. But we'll link it in and we'll show that because that for me is what's really interesting is on the top two tours there is no anomaly where a lower stroke average doesn't lead to a better position, which is fascinating.
that is
Yeah,
interesting because you'd think
yeah.
that there'd be someone that played a limited schedule on easier events, and they shot 68 every day at Sanderson Farms or whatever. And although I guess that this week's not, you know what I mean, shoot 28 under or whatever. So
Yeah, so no, it's interesting. So then I think second question, getting back to yourself, so that's really interesting in terms of who you played with. You're a pretty good coach these days and developing super quick with the amount of questions and rabbit holes and other things you're going down.
lots of rabbit holes.
So let's take the fact that okay, back then you weren't sure, whether you wanted to do golf. But if you really want to do golf, what would be your advice for Connor starting college, looking back as you coaching him now?
Yeah, I would first off like say you need to take a few massive steps backwards and then ask yourself why you're playing, because if you're playing because of an ego perspective, like you, and that was at the time still while I was playing golf. It wasn't originally, but somewhere around 16, 17, it switched over to where I was playing more like to maintain some level that I had, some ranking that I'd had, which, man, when you're 16, 17, it doesn't matter if you're top ranked in the country, you've got to have your foot on the gas because you're still so far behind where the pros are that like it's not, there's nothing to preserve really. If you think about it, it's, you're trying to preserve your relative status to these other juniors, but the reality is if you don't keep progressing fast, you will lose the relative status. So what you feel like though is like I've got to stay here and I can't try anything new, and I can't open my mind up to potentially changing how I do things because I am so terrified I'm going to lose this top ranking status or whatever, or top 5 ranking status or whatever it is. Um, and then at that point that you start thinking that way, it is completely an ego based mindset, and that's not a growth based mindset. So if you are truly growth based and mastery based, then you would be looking internally and thinking about, okay, what could I do to improve what I'm doing right now, and taking some measurements and stats and stuff, and then just thinking about it pragmatically, like what can I do in this, cycle or this semester that can elevate my game a bit more. And then at the end of the semester, I'll see if it worked. And if not, we'll pull a few things and we'll try again. And I'm gonna get there. And that's the mindset that I wish that I had known, and I would have been able to spend a week with, probably would have had to spend a whole week with myself at that time to get me to understand that. I don't think I could have done it in a conversation. And it's hard for my juniors. It's like an an ongoing thing that I'm trying to instill versus like a one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's fascinating because you can look back and it's obvious, but actually, when you're in that moment, it's so not obvious that that's the case. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you sort of felt you were sort of so close to it, you couldn't actually see what's going on, and you need to step back. And then is it also a case that at certain points to get better, there's a bit of a quantum shift in how you have to look at stuff. So what got you to a certain level as an elite junior isn't what you needed to become an elite college player, which
Oh my
isn't.
God. Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? Because that's
It,
something.
and this is another thing is I don't come from a golf family. Like my dad's not Davis Love.
Is he not?
Yeah.
Oh,
No. Yeah. Oh, surprise, right? Yeah. No, like my dad doesn't even play golf. And it's like it is it's very hard when you're 16 to find these answers for yourself. Um, Scotty had Randy Smith, which was really great. He was Justin Leonard's coach and stuff. I had some coaches as well. Um, that's a whole different topic. Um, but yeah, it's just very hard as a 16-year-old to be like to think this way, to think. And on top of that, you're also constantly so concerned with your position socially that as a 16-year-old and awkward and you know trying to find a girlfriend and like doing like trying to be cool for whatever reason, and it's just very hard to step back and think about your life in a more like you know um analytical, less emotional way. But yeah, like you said, like there's totally stages. Like junior offers, there is a stage that a junior offer needs to hit a whole barrel of balls and just whack them, like because that club he's using is becoming part of his hand, and it at some point there's benefit from that. Like he's just hitting ball after ball. He's using the tool over and over again. Whether he's using the tool perfectly or not, in some ways doesn't matter because he's starting to just be aware of where it is, you know? And then you can start like refining some things. And that's not the time to hit 25 balls of focused maintenance development practice as a 5 year old or a 7 year old. Like that's where you get like, okay, here's the general swing, now just go, and then just hit a bunch of balls. And that is not how you become an elite golfer from a good junior golfer though. Like
true.
that's
Okay.
that and that's where the
Yeah.
shift is. Like,
Yeah.
and if you don't know that, then you begin to mistake quantity for quality, and and yeah. And then last thing that I'd like to say is I had a lot because I didn't come from like a golfing background, or maybe it was the information at the time wasn't as good. It was still like 90s coaching, even though it was 2015. Like TrackMan had come out, but not a ton of people like had them, or not a ton of people knew. Even I was 17 before I found out that the face is what causes start line and not the path. And because as it like the old way, people would always teach that path would start line, and where your face is pointing would cause the ball to curve to that spot. And like I was 17 and I'd already won the Western Junior whenever I found that out, and I didn't believe the guy who told me. I remember who it was. It's Bryn, and Bryn was like, "Yeah, mate, he's from South Africa." The face, and I'm like, "What are you talking about? You're an idiot!" Like, no, it doesn't. And and at that time, like all of my golf technique was dogma, like like it was complete dogma. It was not anything based on like first principles of, okay, this is what causes start line, this is what causes curvature, and like in that way you have millions of options to figure out and strategize how to fix something. At the time, it was like, no, your both your V's have to be to your right shoulder. You have to have your pressure on the balls of the feet. You have to feel like you shift your weight to the back foot. You have to make sure the club's swinging on plane from whatever camera angle the guy's saying. It has to come back down on plane. No, it shouldn't loop underneath because that's big loop. That's a big loop. That's not consistent. Like, what does that even mean? Like, that's not consistent. You don't. Did you test that? And then that's that was like overwhelmingly what was spending my practice time, and it was just trash. Like, it was such trash way to practice for, and which led to regression from 16 to 23, I guess 22. Like, it was just regression from that point. I'd probably gotten to like, I didn't keep track, but I'd probably gotten to close to like a +5 or 6 or something at that time. And then next thing you know, you're playing like you're shooting, mid 80s and stuff. And it's just,
You're playing with Will at Bucks event in England.
I was actually good. And could you help me? Because I really suck. So
Let's move on to that. Let's move on to that because what I'd like to do next is
dogma's bad. That's what I want to say. Dogma in golf is bad. I don't know about other parts of life, but in golf specifically, like, saying this is the only way you can take the club back or this is the only way that you can swing a club is bad because it's not true. There's a million ways to do things, and I think you're the big influence on me with that in a lot of ways.
Well, it was good. We'll talk through that. So we met at a Bucks event, the only Bucks individual event I ever played, and
Funny how that works.
it was horrific weather, wasn't it? Pretty much should have got called off by the wind, but went in
Yeah,
afterwards.
and putts were basically moving.
I think we had a chat, and really from your golf game there, that probably came on from where you were at college, which is you kind of felt you're broken. You couldn't hit drive or keep it on the planet. I still remember you hitting 3 or 4 drives 60 yards right that day in Round Trevose in horrific conditions and shot 3 over par. I was like, who is this guy? How has he got it round? So I mean, you were obviously a ridiculously good golfer still. And then we went in afterwards, and I think I started with a cup of tea with our chat, and then I had a pint or 2 pints afterwards.
Yeah. I think I actually still have that journal because we went through notes about the way that the way that you would, and you were the first person I think to take it like step by step, and you're like, okay, let's look at this from afar. Like, all right, like, where are you? Where do you want to go? Let's break it down. And like, you're like the first person to do that, and it kind of led me to the journey that I'm on now. That conversation.
So let's get to that because like I think it was just you at the right time. I'm sure people tried before, but maybe you weren't in a position to sort of take in that and start to reflect on that.
Yeah, it's one of those like memories, right? Where
yeah,
if you weren't in the position, you think no one said anything to you, and probably people said it to me the whole time, and I finally was in a receptive thing. But to my knowledge, that was the first time anyone had done that with me.
So then you were struggling, I think, when we met with your game, and now you're at a point. Where are you back to now? I suppose. Where are you?
Plus 3.8. The goal is to get to +6, and then once I'm at +6, I feel like I did a study, and it seems like +6 is kind of where you need to be performing at to be able to get through like Q schools and get cards. And then I think that's a good step. Once you get a card, then we can start making like some new goals going forward from that. But yeah, I do that. I keep handicap just because why not? Technically, you're supposed to have a handicap when you sign up for a lot of these events. So most people just write down whatever they think, and then their pro will sign it. But that's a fact, by the way, people, in case you want to know the scandalous truths. But so I figured I might as well just have like an actual handicap, and then it's also easy to track, and like, yeah, it's an easy stat. But yeah, so yeah, it's getting better. Yeah.
Yeah. Then if we go back to what are the steps? What, I suppose, broad strokes, because we've talked for hours since we first spoke about your journey. So what are the broad steps which have got you from struggling, can't keep drive on the planet, don't know why I'm not scoring better, to where you're back to +4 and you're starting to move back to sort of +6 standard?
Yeah.
What would be those core components for people to understand?
Yeah. I think the first thing was eliminating dogma. I've mentioned that before, but like this is the only way that you can hit a driver. Because even whenever I started getting curious about how to fix it, I would go to a new coach, and then he would tell me something, and that would be my new dogma. And it was like, I think it's like totally missing the forest for the tree, and you're I went and was able to work with Sean Foley, who I'm lucky enough to still be able to be in contact with a little bit, and he was wonderful. But whatever his opinions at the time were, which he had a couple swing things that he wanted me to change, that became for the next year my dogma. Like I had to do it, had to do it that way, and it was like that's not really how it should work. So I think what is in broad strokes, what's led me from driving it poorly to now I have like a strokes gained app. My last trailing 10 rounds, I think I've lost 3/10 of a stroke um, from driving to PGA Tour average and gained one shot approach. And
That's awesome. That stat. That's so difficult to do.
yeah, so the ball striking now is and a couple of those, three of those were in tournaments, which was nice. Three of those 10 rounds. So um, like to me, I think it was just being curious about finding answers to kind of concrete questions, and then um, also being open to that there's a lot of strategies to get there. That would probably be the way. Whereas before it was like, no, this is how it has to be, and if I can't do it this way, it's because I have a mental problem or whatever. Like I can't. I have a mental block.
So, two questions on that for those people listening. First up, is sort of believing that you don't have to swing it in a particular way freeing? That'd be the first
Yeah,
question.
okay.
And then the second
Okay.
one, second part of that, how do you know what is dogma? Because loads of people will be going, well, is this dogma? Is what I'm working on.
Yeah, I think so. First question, yes, so freeing to realize there's not a rule. Like if you flip around left-handed and flip the club upside down and you hit it in the fairway, then good on you. So that would be the first thing. Yeah, it's very freeing because then you realize there's a million options, and and that relates to the second question. And if it's, I think that if it's not a if what the person is telling you is not a first principles type thing, or even you could even go back maybe like a second principles type thing, then it's dogma. So for just to give you like examples, Scott Cowix is my current coach. He says, and this was great. It was like so revealing for me. He said, "Man, Connor, I have all these people that tell me I'm striking it so good, striking it so good, Scott." And I say, "That's great, pal, but what does that even mean? Does that mean you feel comfortable? Is that what you mean? If so, that's great. But like, if you want me to believe you're striking it great, go out, hit 10 balls with your TrackMan or your unit. Tell me how many start between, if you're a drawer, how many start between 1 and 4 degrees right of your target with a spin axis of 1 to 4 degrees left with a 7 iron, and hit 10 balls, and come tell me how many of them had those parameters, and and you'll let me know, and I'll decide if you're swinging right. Because like being able to start the ball where you want it, which is start line, right? And to be able to curve it in the direction you want with the curve amount, that would be somewhat what would define a good shot. And there could be some error in there, 1 to 4 degrees start line right, 1 to 4 degrees spin axis left with a 7 iron. Interestingly enough, for driver, it should be half the spin axis to the start line, and then with wedges, it's double. But yeah, like that 1-to-1 thing where it's like, okay, I'm gonna think about what I can do in my golf swing to make that happen. Where I start the ball here and it curves here, and if it's not directly related to it, then I would say it's dogma. So for me, I think the kinematics of the club that we've chatted about a whole bunch, um, I think that directly relates to face and path relationship. Um, so to me, that's not dogma, but it is something you need to be aware of. Um, but yeah, that's so. I think that beyond that, it becomes dogma. Yeah,
So I'm trying to sum up Connor's thoughts here. I think in terms of what players should reflect on, which is, I suppose, the hard truth, is
yeah,
dispersion and outcome, and then based on that, impact factors and ball flight. Like we
yes,
kind of know
yeah,
that
yeah,
was everything. And then you have this second stage, which I suppose is then principles, which I suppose we'd use, but it's sort of, well, if someone's more over here, they're more likely for this to happen. But if they're more this, then they're less likely. But don't get too head up on that in terms
yeah,
of
yes, yeah. And I think
perfection.
though, like traditionally, golf coaches teach it. by drawing a line through either the shaft or the elbow or whatever. And they pick an arbitrary camera angle that they set up very haphazardly. And the hands don't even swing on a plane because the right elbow folds. So like it's like a weird, unique geometric shape. And yet you're trying to like there's just no good camera angle like in 2D to see these things. And so it's like the notion of if you do these things it's more likely for
Yeah.
these impact factors. Like it's just really hard to even say that from a camera angle perspective. So thankfully there's like things that are coming out like Sportsbox AI, and there's some hack motion stuff you reviewed, and then if you're lucky enough you can go to a lab with Sasha McKenzie, which I haven't been, but I want. That's one of my bucket list things.
So that plug. Hoping Sasha listens to this.
Yeah, and get like the club's movement relative to hand path on there and using like their systems. But like, yeah, 2D video is just really really tough.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. It's like if we go to extremes, if someone's ripping their right trainer as they come into their downswing, they're probably going to have to into out swing path, and if you can, so there's sort of these trends, but what you can't explain and what we can't see on camera is the forces that are being applied to the club head. So what we're doing is we're making estimations of what that club's going to do as it approaches impact based on its position. And that's an art. It's an art and a skill. And do you know what?
It is 100% an art.
Sometimes you can get a really good handle on what's going on, and other times it's so tricky with more elite players to understand why a club's doing something. And that's where you have to go, there's forces going on here, and there's maybe internal constraints, but we don't know them, and you have to really work with the player with problem solving. And for me personally, that's difficult as a coach because they want to have 100% faith that you have the answer. And actually you're saying, look, this is what we need in terms of outcome. That's evident. How we get there, we need to work on, and there's a bit of problem solving.
I think that's when you become a good coach. For me, this is the first year that I think I am a good coach, in terms of like, because coaching is a skill as well. So like the first 3 years of me teaching, the first year I was seeing a stack and tilt instructor for my own game. So I was basically teaching some version of stack and tilt, and without being like a stack and tilt certified guy, it was just, that was kind of the Mo Ratty way of thinking about the swing and breaking it down. And that's like the lens that I tried to teach everyone through. Then the next year I was working with Sean Foley. Then now I was trying to like combine those things I learned from Sean with the stuff that I was working with the other guy, and I was trying to blend this. So then this is the first year where I felt like what you just said. These are the things that we have to get your attack angle correct here. Like there's a good example. There's a little girl that I teach that's a very good junior golfer, but she struggles a lot with wedge play. And interesting enough, she has a super, if you put her on the hack motion, super player B release pattern. So it gets really this way, probably because her grip is really weak. It's really flexed, and then on the downswing releases this way. Well, that's all great, but when her place is so closed, she falls back to try to help the ball up in the air, and her attack angle gets up with a wedge. And so if she's not timing it really well and picking it perfect, she starts hitting these drop kicky shots and thin shots and drop kick and thin, and her wedges are a problem. So I put her on my GC3 that I have, and put the GC3 there, put the face tag on, and it was like, sure enough, like it was nice to see my like you said, you look at it on video, you're like, this looks like it's going up. Let's test it and see if it actually is. She was hitting like 7 up on it with a wedge.
Wow.
Yeah. So imagine like
skillful.
your best option at that point is hitting first groove. Like that's your best. There's no way you're hitting third groove that way. And I just was able to say we have to hit 0 to 4 down, like minimum. And like just let's just start doing that. And there's a million ways to do it, but like that is a first principles. We got to do that to be able to have a solid strike on this golf ball, with this club that we have with bounce. If we remove bounce, maybe there's more option. I don't know, but with the club that we currently have that has 10 degrees of bounce, we've got to do that. So I think then now that's where I think you become a better coach, but then in a lot of ways you become less popular because they want you to,
Fix me, fix me now.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you need to say, look, like I'm going to be honest with you, and a lot of other people won't. these
Yeah.
these are what needs to fix, and we're going to need to throw some dirt on the wall and see what sticks. And that's
But
more, I think, of proper coaching.
well, I think there's two lessons for this. One for us and then actually for players as well, which is um, I look at what you just said as developing your coaching toolbox. And there's
Mhm.
obviously the saying that if you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. You know,
Yeah,
so
that's great.
you've now like added a screwdriver and a wrench, and you've got a few different tools here. But I think that goes the same for a player that's stuck and only knows about technical stuff. They're always going to go, well, what's wrong with my technique? If anyone then knows about stats or knows about practice structure or knows about physical development or psychological aspects, they can actually then start to go, well, how am I going to solve this problem? And I think that's one of the big things with players is giving them those tools to go away and work on their game. But
Yeah, yeah.
as you said before, it's not a one-off. Here's something. It needs to keep going and keep going and keep going. You know.
It's almost like thinking about start line and curvature is great and all for practice, but like in reality, that's even a step back from like what you just said. Like your on course performance would probably be like would not probably be, it is first, and then yeah, stroke average, and then from there, okay, what's we could go into strokes gained. Okay, what's causing the strokes gained? Okay, could we pick target, like let's go with the easiest wins. Could we pick better targets? Would this lower our score? If so, great. Stops there, like for now, and let's do it and see where it gets, and then we'll take a step back again. If not, and it's just your dispersion pattern is 100 yards wide with driver, okay, let's figure out what's going on. Let's get to your face path. Then you would go to face path. Then you would go to like, it works backwards like that. Whereas a lot of people, this is how it was for me. Like my freshman year of high school, I played 8 events um, that year in high school golf, and I won 7 of them. And
Wow.
we were very competitive. It was in Texas, and my stroke average was like we played pretty much the black tees. We played very far back because it was 5A high school golf, which in Texas is very competitive. And my stroke average was like 70.2 or 70.3 or something like that. And that was the year that I went out and I won the Western Junior. Then I knocked Scotty out of the US Junior. And then like it was a really good, I was playing really, really good that year. But I when I started struggling at 16, it was like the way I thought of it, and this is where it's wrong, and I think this is how everyone else thinks about it, is they have that tiger thing of like 97. I won the Masters. What do I do to get better? Oh, I've got to fix the club at the top from being across the line. Now from there, man, I'm going to be really good. And there's no logic. There's no logic in that. Like there's no steps to it. And so for me, it was like, oh wow, I just had a really great season, being way across the line, slinging it under, and opening really hard. Imagine if my club was on flame. Like, man, I'm gonna be the next thing.
And then you do a David Duval.
Yeah, I'll be the next David Duval. So the next thing you know, I'm spending my whole 16th year, 15th, 16th year, working on takeaway and letting the club lay off more to where it's, more down the line. And then you get, for me, I got like the driver yips. And um, it's a great way of like, I was trying to improve by saying skipping a million steps of analysis and jumping to one arbitrary thing that had no backing. So in reality, it is no one else's fault but my naivety and stupidity at the time to not be able to question things. And I think that would be another thing that I'd say, if you're improving, is you need to listen to yourself, and you need to be not afraid to question things, because if you can't understand it, then you're not gonna, like, you really want to spend a year of your time that's precious following some path that you don't even understand. Like it's okay to question things. And I think what I've noticed from a lot of the better players that are more cognitive, they do question pretty much everything, and they until they feel, okay, this is reasonable, and I'm willing to commit myself to this line of logic for the year, and I think it'll be better at the end of the year. Then they reassess.
Yeah, I think that's it. It doesn't lower stroke average. If it lowers your stroke average directly, great. If it's a few steps away, what are you missing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I skipped 9 steps.
Couple of things I'd love to
Yeah.
get to. I want to do a little bit on your caddying time and like what you learned from that about elite golf and your own golf. And then we need to get onto your practice plan because I know how good you are now at structuring practice, and I'd love people to see that and understand that and hear you talk through it. So we're all right with those two sections.
My juniors are starting to enjoy that as well, which is nice.
Good man.
We're starting with caddying, right?
Caddying, yeah, let's go caddying because then I feel we're going to get down a little hole at the end with practice structure. But caddying, so for people that don't know, what was this? This is the reason we stopped the last podcast. Is you left me really? Let's start there.
Yeah.
But get onto the story of caddying, and then what did you learn about elite performance whilst you were there? And then I've got a few follow up questions.
I'd say that like my time from elite competitive golf to the time caddying was from I played the 2012 US Amateur, and then my first time caddying for Johannes was the 2021 BMW in Munich. So that's 9 years, I think, of me playing in steadily reduced competitiveness tournaments. So like play the US Amateur, and then you're playing some college events, and then it just like got weaker and weaker and weaker the field as I struggled more and more and more. So I think it what the first thing did was it reinvigorated me and reintroduced to me like truths that I probably already knew, but I had forgotten over 9 years. So that would be the first thing I'd say.
Like what?
Like how to play a practice round properly, like um, like what good players do in a practice round.
Which is
That's a whole topic.
okay.
It's a whole podcast.
You can come back.
We'll get to those spark notes. Or even like what does a really good player's shot dispersion look like? That's a huge one. What are like what does good golf look like? Like where are there if you take a whole field, like how many of them are hitting at this distance and how many of them are hitting this distance? And like ball speeds, you're on the range with people. What is Jazz Jane Watson None's driver ball speed when he goes as hard at it as possible? And a lot of these things are actually really motivating because you realize that they're actually not that far out. Most of them, there's about 10% that are, but there's like 90% that it feels really realistic that you can get your game to that point. And that is when I felt like, wow, I really want to do this, even though I'm getting old. Like I want to try to do this again.
Happy birthday for last week, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
27.
So as far as how did I get into caddying, Johannes had a caddy that was great named Nick Pugh. He left to go work for Lucas Herbert, and Johannes needed a fill-in caddy, and he just said, "Yo, Connor, I leave for Germany tomorrow. I have no caddy this week. You know, do you know anyone that would potentially want to caddy for me?" And it was like, that's how he framed it. And at the time I was just like teaching and going through the motions a bit. It felt like I was teaching. I was obviously wanted to do a good job teaching, but I just didn't feel like I had much like purpose in some ways outside of just that. It felt very stale, everything. And I think it was like, oh, this sounds very exciting. Like let's do this. So I talked to my wife and she thought it'd be a good idea as well, I guess, to get rid of me for a week or two. So, so I was at lunch with my parents when he texted me, and an hour later, I was packing a suitcase to go to Munich, rushing, of course, to go get a COVID test because it was COVID time. So went off to Munich. We missed the cut by one. We had a really stupid course management thing on our 15th hole. We were way inside the cut line. We went for a par four in one shot, which makes no sense when you're. I guess we're not way inside. We were 2 shots inside. So of course we hit it in the water and we like make double and missed the cut by one or something. And that was a great experience. And like it was just like felt like the nausea of missing a cut and what the emotional feeling is of that. And practiced and then went off to Ireland because that was the second week, and I was only supposed to caddy Germany and Ireland, and Johannes is in the final group, come the 68th hole, and we were leading like with 3 holes left or 4 holes left, and again, a course management error that we both made on the 16th hole to a back pin, decided to try to push it back there, plugged it in the back bunker, lost the tournament on that hole basically. Finished third, but he did finish third there. That was the open qualifying event. So he got an invite into the British Open, the Open, sorry, the British Open, the Open, and then also the Scottish Open the following week. So he didn't have a caddy for those. So he says, "Hey, Connor, we just finished third. Do you want to caddy these next two?" Call my wife, and she's like, "Yeah, go for it, go for it." So, so I go off to I guess actually that was my fiance at the time. I go off to Scotland, and we finish eighth. Had a very outside chance to potentially win that. And then we go up to the Open, and we're teeing off first round with Jason Day, and I'm like, this is the most bizarre month of my life, And we made the cut at the Open, and yeah, so it was a really great 4 weeks. So I came back home, started teaching again, lost a few clients from being gone a month, but that was okay. And after 2 weeks, Johannes asked me if I wanted to go back again for a next stretch, because he and his team thought he performed a lot better with me on the bag. Some of that's coincidence, and some of that I think is just us being best friends. So it's just nice to have someone that's comfortable, and we think very similarly. So, so we went off to our first week in Prague, and this is like where I left you at the last podcast. So I guess this is for anyone that is. We do have a few people that listen, so this is the update. We went off to Prague. His clubs didn't show. They were lost. We because of that, we got to just like relax, I guess, the first 3 days. We had to get cash somewhere. His debit card was eaten into an ATM. It was just like, this is a nightmare. And we got our clubs Wednesday. We were able to play a quick round, so we only got one practice round in, and then we won the tournament. And like that was 6 weeks after he first called me, and we're in the final hole with Henrik Stenson and Tapio Pulkanen for Johannes's first one, and he hits it on the green, and he just has to not four putt, and that was like the hardest not four putt ever. Like it was, and like it was just what like a way to fall in love with golf again. Like, I hit Henrik Stenson in the eye with an umbrella on accident, and he made some joke that I'm trying to take him out or whatever, and like, and then talking with Johannes in the fairway where he had 152 yards, and it's a front left pin, and there's a water short over the greens. Goes down into like a valley, and we're deciding between pitching wedge and 9-iron, and he's like, I think it's wedge, and I'm like, please 9-iron. But then he said, no, I think it's wedge. I'm like, please 9-iron, like please 9-iron. 9-iron out, and he hit it to the middle of the green, and then two putted.
Unreal.
That was wonderful.
Can I ask on that, because this is one of these
Yeah.
things that obviously there's people who listen to like, what on earth going through tour players' head down the last 9 holes you're about to win. I think some people falsely think they're like robots. It's like no emotion. And so what is that like coming down the stretch?
It's more like vomiting before every shot, it feels like. But it's like one of those things where if you've ever ridden a roller coaster, you feel like vomiting, but you also feel like so high. Like you feel like this adrenaline high, and it's just the entire time. And if you love to compete, it's just so fun, because it is the highest level of competition and the most intense. Like there's cameras everywhere, there's people yelling, there's people next to you that I've watched Henrik Stenson my whole life, and it's like, how cool would it be to beat him, and like the stakes just feel so high, and the adrenaline is so high, and it's just like, and also the focus is so high. Like you're like, when you get that much adrenaline, if you have a process I'd say would be the nice prepositional phrase there. Like if you do have a process, you can really perform well because it like that type of adrenaline is like designed to make you focus on something. And if you direct your attention to what you're supposed to put your attention on, man, you can perform like really well as a caddy, as a player. Like as a caddy, what was nice is Johannes the first week set me down, was like, these are the things that I want you to do. These are the things I don't want you to do. And this is the time frame I want you to be able to do them in. And basically after every round, we would go through whether how well I did on those, just like any employee. And it was nice. So like caddying was just straight process, like because I didn't have to perform anything. I just had to follow this process, and he had to perform and hit the shot. And mine was just completely um yeah, like a process. So like when you have that much adrenaline as a caddy, it's nice because you just follow the process, and if anything, you're doing it better and faster. All sorts of things, you know.
Is
Yeah.
that the secret to winning on tour? Is not just following the process, but having phenomenal process that you do every single shot for however long
Yeah.
beforehand.
Yeah, I think your purpose becomes how well could I do the process today, and then when you do that, I think your performance tags along if you've trained well. But yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. And then the other thing that I noticed was, sorry, last thing would be that like adrenaline is not something to be scared of if you do have a process. Um, it's something that would potentially elevate like the level. No one loves to to vomit, but everyone still loves. Maybe not everyone. A lot of people I know that are competitive love the the feeling of that at the same time. So it's this duality of I love it and I also am nauseated right now. Um, but like that's nothing to be scared of. It's like if anything, you can just increase your levels of attention and focus, I think.
It feels different, and
Yeah.
there's many reasons why. But yeah, just because it feels different doesn't mean you can make great golf swings.
Yes. And Johannes's coach at the time, before one of his rounds, said, um, Johannes said, I don't know, it just feels different. And then he said, it's not supposed to feel the same. And then, then Johannes, the entire round, this was at, I think, the British Open, the whole entire round, he was like, it's not, so he looked at me like this, it's not supposed to feel the same. I said, no, it's not supposed to feel the same. And then he did his shot, he did another shot, and then he gave me the wedge, and he'd say, feel the same. No, it's not supposed to be the same. And it was great to just go on that process, to live that part of his life with him, because I think he's going to be a Ryder Cupper, and he's going to be a top 10 player in the world one day. And it was definitely, I think, like a pivotal moment in his career, and I was able to experience it with him, which was like, I'm so blessed and lucky to have done that.
That's unreal. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I also love that you've actually been a caddy for 12 weeks and you've won on tour. People do this for like 25 years and haven't had a tour win.
Yeah.
You just rock up, you're just like, yeah, I'll caddy in the British Open. Yeah, yeah, we've had a win. Yeah, I'm off now. Bye. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Completed
And
caddy.
also, yeah, like the stretch afterwards, we went to Switzerland and we went to Italy, and then we Nikolai Hogard won Italy, but we were in the second to last group and one shot back with 3 holes left. And we hit a drive. We almost drove the green on the 16th hole, and we're one shot back. And like I was like, oh crap, we're gonna win Italy too. Like wow. We chili dipped the chip. And then we ended up hitting the long run 17th. So we finished like sixth or something. But yeah, like it was I had a career that a lot of caddies never get to in 12 weeks, which was just so lucky. Yeah.
That's awesome. But I love this insight because, you know, what you just said there, he's going to be unreal. He's already had a lot of success. But those shots where you're like, oh, we almost drove 16, chili dipped it, hit it in the water, didn't win. No one ever
Yeah.
remembers that. And elite players,
No.
if they do that, that's like, I can't be elite. I hit a bad shot under pressure. And you're like, no, that's part of it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. It, people don't it's golf coverage sucks. Like you just see the highlights whenever you're watching it. And if you're there in person, that's one of the benefits of going to a tournament in person. You get to really see what it really looks like. That's kind of what I was getting at earlier, that it doesn't look as unattainable when you're there. Except for a few people. Like we played with Tommy Fleetwood in Italy, and the rest of his game looked very attainable, but his driver looked a bit unattainable at the time for me. It was like like a 5 yard shot dispersion with driver, and it was like, wow, okay, like, this is pretty
That's a
crazy.
superpower.
But those are like the top 10%, of people, and I think the rest of his game is more normal, but like that would be one of his, he's one of the top 10%ers in that type of accuracy, and so yeah, it's um in general, like it was very motivating to see those things, because yeah, you can hit a bad shot under pressure, but that doesn't mean that you're broken. It just it just means that you're playing a very difficult game, and that's okay.
So then I think one last thing on this before we get to your practice plan and have a little geeky ending on
Yeah,
practice.
yeah.
What changes did you make about your own game? So you're on tour, you came back, you're like, this is unreal. Obviously, it's unreal. You just watch someone win on tour and have a really successful season. You then come back and you progressed your game quite a lot. I think you were on a better path in terms of your holistic golf development and understanding
Yeah, I was
stats,
clear. I was more clear.
practice,
Yeah.
and then you're working on your technique. What are the things that from tour you're like, okay, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do that?
Johannes reminded me of, because do you remember how I told you at the beginning that I began my strategy for getting better, because I thought I kind of thought I was at the destination already when I was 15. Oh, I'm here. Like I'm pretty much where I need to be. Once I grow a little bit, I'll hit a little farther. I'll be best. And the reality was like you're so far still behind that you still need to improve so much. So my strategy for getting to what I felt was good enough was to care less, because I felt like if I care less, I'll start performing like I did at this time when I was 15. Um, and what that led to was me losing touch with how hard you have to work. And it was really great 9 years after, like I was 16 at the US Amateur. So 9 years later, being reminded like how hard um, being an elite golfer actually is for someone that's very intentional with what they're doing. And Johannes is very intentional. So it was a great reminder. I think that was what I took away from it was he um, he had um, a a team surrounding him, which you can kind of make yourself. I've tried to kind of make it myself, which I think has been working this year nicely. But you know, he looked at every 6 weeks or 8 week stint, um, his stats. He'd look at each part of it, and then he'd talk to his coach, figure out what he thought would be better. Then he himself had his own practice games, his own practice things that he would do, and he would just go about it. So Monday we would play 9 holes. He'd take a lesson. I would walk the back nine. We'd have our book made. Tuesday we'd get there in the morning and we'd test out the book in the morning, play 18 holes, take a break, have cappuccinos, and then in the afternoon, once we have the course all ready and we have that, we'd play an iron game and we'd do a numbers game. And then after we do the numbers game, we do a driver game. And after we do the driver game, we'd take another cappuccino break. Then we'd go do a putting game where we'd practice reading putts together. Then we leave, have great Thai food, and then go to sleep. And then the next day, take it pretty easy. Like if it's a pro am, play the pro am, or if it's not, we would do like an iron maintenance and development practice, just a few things that his coach wanted to work on, hit some numbers, make sure that we had those down, maybe get some wedge numbers, and then leave. And but the first 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, were 12-hour days. Like they're like long days, and they were like a great reminder of, oh, holy crap, we're at like 20 hours, 22 hours of practice after 2 days. I don't think I've practiced 22 hours in a week for,
That's after jet lag as well. Jet lag. You just flown
yeah,
in
yeah.
somewhere. Yeah.
And it was like one of those things that you play 18 holes on a Tuesday in the morning, and I'm exhausted. Like I carried 60 pounds or whatever. And it's like, no, like you've gotta like, let's take a cappuccino break. Let's chat about things, maybe we'll play chess because we like to play chess. And then let's get back to work. And granted, like at least I wasn't practicing. I was just there like helping with the numbers and recording things, or cleaning clubs. But like it was like he was pretty much on a mission of like, no, this is what you do. This is what you do to be good, and this is what I'm gonna do. And it was a great reminder of like how hard you have to work. So that's what I took away, was that when I came back, it's like, okay, I need to think about this from performance based. What am I not good at? what systems can I build to see if I could get good at them, and how organized could I get? Because like Kevin Kirk said before, when in one of our interviews, the reason why he felt like he didn't make it as a player was because he wasn't organized enough. And I think that's like completely true. Now that I was caddying, that organization of your practice rounds, organization of your plan, how you practice when you're on the road, even your finances, like all that stuff is absolutely pivotal if you're going to be able to perform well. So that's what I learned.
Cool.
Definitely.
I think
Yeah.
that links back nicely. You know, when we're talking about that like 1-2% change each week
Yeah.
of those people that are doing the right things. I think you look at JV and he's obviously doing pretty well. But
Yeah.
if you do that 42 weeks a year and have 10 weeks off, you're gonna get better.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Even if you did that with a limited time schedule, like I saw one of your points was what would your advice be for, a golfer that doesn't have as much time? I think it's the exact same. Like it's the exact same. It's just being more realistic with
2 hours
the
a
rate
week.
of the 2 hours a week. Yeah, being more realistic with the rate of your improvement.
Mm.
But I bet you'll get a lot better than the guy spending 20 hours without a plan,
Mm.
because like at least percentage like improvement wise. Um, because yeah, like absolutely. First off, when you're first beginning, there's a lot easier wins. Like there's a lot of edges to knock off on the statue that are really easy. Just knock off one edge, knock off another edge. There's not as many like nostrils that you're refining when you're sculpting. Um, that being said, it's like um, I still think that the rate of your improvement would be better than someone that has more time without a plan. So I'd say if you're like you had 2 hours for practice, um, and let's say you had one day you could play 9 holes, I would say play 9 holes. Keep basic stats. Don't even get into like strokes gained and stuff. Just keep basic stats with fairways, greens hit, greens missed. Like up and downs and putts.
Dispersion, just some X's on a bit of paper. Where do you miss the fairways? Where do you miss the greens? That for me is so important.
You could throw a target line on a piece of paper and dot it. And yeah, it's like if you just had those things, then you could record them into a little sheet. If you have 2 hours, then it takes you 10 minutes at the end of the week to throw it into a little sheet, and then that way you have it categorized. And then I'd say pick once you maybe get like 3 weeks in a row, you got 27 holes of stuff. You'll have a decent idea of kind of what you're doing well. So I'd say the first 3 weeks, if you're doing this plan, if I was coaching you, I'd say, all right, play first 3 weeks, play 9 holes once a week. Don't worry about practice. And then fourth week, let's sit down and look at what you really are bad at, and then what you're pretty decent at. And then let's then make these little 30-minute practice blocks for different parts of your game. So maybe you really need to work on driving, and we'll do two 30-minute blocks a week. And then you really could work on your putting. So that's the next big event. So we'll do two 30-minute blocks of putting, and that's what we're gonna work on for now. And then when you play, you'll get your iron practice in, and then and then go play, and then do that for 3 weeks, and then come back, and then reevaluate, and then adjust it, and you will get good eventually. Like it'll just take longer. You will get good though
Yeah, but
if
I
you stick
think
with that.
if you're 18 and you do that for say 18 handicap and you do that for 3-4 weeks, you get down to 15, 14 super quickly.
Yeah, yeah. The first part's easy.
When you're trying to make jumps from like 10 to 5 is hard, and 5 to like 1 is hard, but you just keep doing it. And you're right. I
Sometimes
think
I feel like 10. Sometimes I feel like 10 to 5 is harder than 5 to 1, and sometimes I feel like
depends on the player.
it makes no sense, but it does seem like there's. It seems like there's a point when golf IQ, like there's a certain golf IQ that's achieved, and at that point, I'm a believer that once you're a scratch golfer, once you're always a scratch golfer. Like that's my opinion, because like there's just a way that you think when you get to that level that you can't really get taken away. Like there's a lot of like Gordon Johnson is my old boss at Houston Country Club, and he played a season on the PGA Tour and played for University of Alabama. And I bet you if he kept his handicap's probably like a 4 or a 5, right? But he's not a 4 or 5 handicap. He's like he is a scratch
He
golfer.
can play golf. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he thinks. he knows the game. Like it's a different golf IQ than someone, even though he's maybe shooting the same scores because he doesn't practice. He's 68 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, that's my
let's
thought.
move on because I think we've talked about that, and then this is a nice wrap up for people to see how you're practicing and talk through this.
Yeah,
Now, do you want to try and share it in your phone, and we
yeah.
sort of get
We'll
the plan
share.
up?
Let's see. I have about like 32 hours open on my sheet a week of lessons booking through my website that you could book with me at. But then I also have, let's see, 4, 8, 12, 16. I have about 26 hours blocked off for my practice and playing. So there's times that you can't book with me because those are reserved for my practice time and stuff. So yeah, so my biggest thing is just building the plan that's realistic because when I first came back from England with you, and I started trying to build practice plans, and I tried to build practice plans in college with Johannes actually quite a bit, but my problem was always that I would make things that are too ambitious, too unrealistic, and not sustainable. And I think the key to improvement is like sustainable. It has to be a sustainable plan. So for me, it's less is more, and more intentional.
I think that's something I stress with all the elite players that we work with. Can you get 70% of it done every week? If you've got a
Yeah.
practice plan, you get 70% of it done every week, you get better. Trying to do something which is 100% and is maxed out your time limit, that just becomes hard and demotivating.
So I start with a PDF. So this would be like my current
So I would say first
plan.
thing, if someone has never done this before, this is overwhelming. This is quite intense. This is your way of doing it. But can you talk us through, I suppose, the general gist of why you have this, and then jump into a couple of core details?
So I have a name, right, on each of my plans just because I'm geeky, I guess. So this one is my Latin Q school prep. I have Latin Q school in 7 weeks or 8 weeks. So I'm doing 6 week cycles, meaning like I make a plan, I try to follow it for 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, I'll readjust my plan. 6 weeks is like the longest time that I could probably do committing to something like this because otherwise I'll get to a point where I feel like, oh, this is a suboptimal plan and I'll want to start to adjust it during the plan, which is kind of not the purpose of the plan. So I think you could do 3 week cycles is good. 6 week cycles is probably the longest you could do. So my goal is to make a cut in an APT event. That's a tour here. And then get a Latin tour card. My goal before was to get my first pro check, but I got my first pro check recently, so
Congrats.
that was exciting. Thank you. And then I put any non-playing task can be replaced with 9 holes. That's actually adjusted to any task besides the 18-hole
Can,
match can
can
be
you
replaced with nine
explain what
holes.
that is, just quickly, before you jump in?
Yeah, so like for me, playing is absolutely the best type of practice. So if I have a short game combine that I could do, um, it takes maybe an hour. Playing 9 holes by myself will take an hour. It's not like I'm cheating the plan by doing less time. It's just that I'm actually probably getting even better short game practice on the course.
I've bullied you on this one as well because you are one of those people, you would stand on the range until your swing looked perfect and you'd be terrified a couple of years ago
Yeah,
to go out and
yeah. This
play
is kind of
golf.
Will's. This is kind of Will's rule, to be
So
honest.
I think a lot of people, they need to practice more if you're not elite. But in your case, you're unreal, but you've got to go out and score and actually dare to do it under competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have then what I do is I put my current swing keys, like things that I'm working on with my coach that I want to remember. So these are the current things that for me are important for achieving the impact conditions we talked about earlier. So I wouldn't say this is dogma. I'd say these are guidelines. They're not they're not perfect, but they're
Principles.
guidelines.
Let's go
Yeah.
principles. And that's,
There's some guidelines for how I'm able to hit the type of draw that I play. Um, so then here's the cycle. So I break it down into core tasks. These are the things that, and this is core tasks from actually I stole that from you, the name.
no
So
worries. It's
I
fine.
have I have yeah thanks. I have, I have these essentially what the question would be like at my level of +4, what would I have to do each week to remain +4? Like that's kind of like the way that
That's the
I would
core. Yeah.
phrase it. Yeah. So for me, I'd like to have a 15-foot combine, which is like a test to see how many 15 footers I'll make. A short game combine, which is from Will's website. Actually, it's really good. I have a driver practice, a second driver practice. These are defined in the bottom. There's a definition of tasks in the bottom. Then a short game practice. I already did a short game combine, so only one short game practice. A couple iron practices, one putting practice because I just did a 15-foot combine practice. Play 9 holes by myself once, and then play an 18-hole match or something. That would be for me like a week that if I did all of that, I would stay the same. I would not get worse that week. I'd potentially get better.
And I love the fact that in your 18-hole match, you've got with stats.
Yeah, with stats using Upgame. Shout out to Upgame, who is the greatest stats app in the world, in my opinion. So good. So then
next section, raise the ceiling. Now, where do we get this from? Because I love this.
Yeah, no, I just came up with that.
I thought this came from when we spoke to Doug Gim. Do you remember when he was talking about raising the floor and the ceiling? He was talking about.
I do remember that, and you know what? That must be where I got that from, because I used to have 2 sections here: raise the ceiling and raise the floor. But then I felt like raise the floor implied like I couldn't make it a strength, so I just threw them all under raise the ceiling. So yeah, so then that was a great conversation with Doug. So I do a second short game combine because I found that for me, like, just the short game combine is the best practice. At my point in my career, I'm not learning how to hit shots. Really, I've kind of learned how to hit every type of shot. I feel like it's more important to practice them. So like short game combine for me is like, it shows what areas maybe I could work on a touch more, but it's more of just me reviewing each of the shots and getting the feels for it each week, which for me seems to be more important than like hitting 100 flop shots, because I've already done that in my development at some point. So then I've got driver practice 2, iron practice 2, putting practice 2. So these are like, okay, if I throw in another one of these, and actually these driver practice 2, that's supposed to be 3. That was a typo. And then iron practice 3, and then putting practice 2, because I already had done 2 of the irons and drivers. So I do a little more long game than putting, because that's currently what I still need to feel like improve on more.
And then, so how much of this, just a rough idea, how much of it is skill development versus technique and working on your technique?
So yeah, I'll actually show you here. So like a driver practice would be 25 balls. Can you see the screen still?
Yeah.
Okay, so 25 balls of MAB practice. That's shout out to Nick Pugh. Most of this stuff you'll notice I've stolen. So take that for what if you want to steal mine, that's fine. Just don't sell it. If you go sell it, give me some sort of cut if you're selling this plan. But don't, if you want to use it for your personal plan, go for it. So driver practice, I have 25 balls of MAD, maintenance and development, which for me is technique, setup, alignment, start line. So like those are the things that we covered. So I just like make sure like here's how I kind of like set up. Here's where I want to start the ball, hit the ball in the middle of the face. Those things. Work on the feels that Scott wants me to work on, and then Scott Cowick to be specific. And then I choose a T-ball skill game. It doesn't matter what the game is. Like yesterday, I did a skill game with Richard Lee, who is a pro in Houston, and we were hitting balls next to each other. And then after I finished my driver, I'm like, hey, do you want to do a driver fairway competition? And we picked a fairway that was like 8 yards wide, and we did first to get to like 5 points. And to get a point, you had to get a fairway and the other one had to miss. If you both got it, then no points were given. So like that took 30 minutes. That was like a great practice game. If you're by yourself, I do 2.5 finger width fairway, which is I hold my fingers up. And
I love that. I never heard of that way of doing it. That's awesome.
However much space is between, I got that from Johannes. However much space is between your fingers, that would be the percentage error essentially that you're allowing. So a fun fact, like 1 finger is about 3%. So if you're 100 yards, a finger will cover like 3 yards. If you hold up and it's 3%, I believe it's 3% on either side. So like if you hold up a finger and you put the right edge of your pin on the right edge of the flag on the right edge of the finger, then the left edge of your finger would be 3 yards away from the pin. So I would make a 2.5 yard fairway, and that's percentage, right? So that's 100 yards. So 200 yards would be like six. 300 yards would be nine. I'm really challenging my math skills here. Okay, so two
It's
and a half
pretty
fingers, that'd
narrow.
be, I
Let's go
guess,
with that.
about
Yeah, yeah.
that'd be about
So,
22 and a half yards wide, about from a 300-yard distance. So it's a pretty tight fairway. Gives you like 10-yard error either way, which is good, and you have to hit 7 out of 10 of them in the fairway. And then what I like to do, because in the past I've had bad experience of, if you get stuck on a game, you begin to have your quality go down. I like to make mine capped at a certain limit. So I put 30 balls out and say I have 30 balls to finish the game. It becomes kind of a challenge. Like, I want to finish this game today. I don't want to feel like I left because I ran out of balls. I want to finish. I want to leave because I finished it. Um, but it is nice to have a finality of, okay, after the 30th ball, if you have done this game, you've gotten a good practice in, it's time to leave, because your quality is about to go down. So in total, I've probably got 15 balls of warm up that I don't put in here, 25 balls of NAD, so that's 40, and then 30 balls of that, so that's 70. So a full driver practice, 70 balls probably takes like an hour.
okay.
So that's an example.
Cool. And then come back. Let's have your beautiful face back on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of wrap that up. So I think for most people, they may think, I don't know if they find it surprising or not, but percentage of time technical work versus skill development, that kind of looks like it's 20% technical, and then the rest off the course is kind of skill development.
Whatever 25 divided by 70 would be. Yeah, I guess that would be the percentage of technical to total practice time. And then that's in the practice. And then on top of that, you've got more playing and games and stuff that you're doing outside of that. So yeah, it's probably like 20% technical, 80% skill development. But I think that's, again, one of those things at different times of your career is different.
And different
Right?
times of the season. So this isn't like, this is how you should practice. I think what comes away from it, and people should take, is how deliberate it is. So that you sit down and you actually spend the time for the next 6 weeks. This is what I'm going to do each week, and this is why. And then that's taken care of, and you don't even have to think about what you're doing each day. It's just get up, turn up, perform.
Yeah, that's right. Like, yes, yeah. Like for me, I can print out my calendar this week and highlight the days that I have the least amount of lessons. And then those are the days that I need to target for my playing on course, because that takes longer. And then for the days that I have more stuff, I target my practices, and then I can get all of my stuff done. Actually, I want to show you one other thing. This is how I log it. So I'll share this real quick.
It's Connor's to-do list.
Yeah, I log. I have a practice log. So it's all the weeks. Right.
Wow. Okay.
And
There you
then
go. Yeah. And then you can work out.
and then I have them categorized no longer in core task stuff. I just categorize them into the area of the game it's working on. So I have my putting task listed, short game, approach, driving, scoring drills. And then I have this thing called extra holes, because those can replace, remember, things. And then at the bottom, I'll have like a score that's called weekly grit. So like my first week, I only did 72% of my plan, which for me was a big like hurdle to come over. Is like last week I did 100%, which was great. So that felt great.
Yeah.
But just because I knew I was coming on this podcast. So. No, so essentially what it does is, and then I put an end of week handicap index or whatever. So like for me, what this does is it gives me, like, at the end of a cycle, I'm able to see, okay, like, how am I performing? How well did I follow the cycle? Because you can think you followed it really well, but then you look and you're like, oh crap, I only did 70% week one. And what if I only did 50% this week, right? And what if next week's rainy? And then the last week I did 80. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh, holy crap, I probably only did half of what I thought I was going to do. Maybe the plan's not broken. Maybe I just didn't follow it. What could I do?
I think two really interesting things, because the wrap-up question I really wanted to ask was advice for more elite players. But
yeah,
looking at that plan, there's two things. I think when you finish a stretch of 6 weeks, you've got nowhere to hide. So if you're not playing well enough and you look back and you've only done half your plan, you go, oh, this is yeah. And then secondly, when you've got a lot of time to spend on golf, people get less efficient. And what I've seen from elite players is they spend so much time worrying if they're doing the right thing that they kind of don't do any good practice, because they're always like, maybe I should do more of this. So does that take a lot of the stress away from it, just going, that's my plan?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd like to give advice, because I don't I'm not on podcasts very often as the guest. But I like to give
I'm loving this.
advice for two things. One to the elite player, and one to like the person that wants to play professionally that didn't come out of college with a big contract with Nike or whatever. Like Doug had a nice contract, and you know what I mean. Well deserved contract. He's number one in the world for amateurs, but you know what I mean. Um, so advice for people, elite players that are just wanting to practice better. I think having some sort of constrained time is actually a positive. Um, and you hear those like arguments about life philosophically that the reason why life's precious is because life ends at some day, you know, and that's like how you use your time is then valuable because it's scarce. So I think it's the same thing with practice. The reason in junior golf I think kids get so good so fast is because they've got not only are they coming from they're just like learning monsters. They just learn things so fast, children, but like they have school and they're doing other sports and then they have a little window of golf and but their parents are good at keeping them on task and they stick with it for a year and like it gives the potential options during their practices smaller. So what are they going to do? They're going to hit a bucket of balls, they'll putt, and they'll play nine. Like that's not a bad practice. Like
It's unreal. No, no, yeah. Even at elite level, yeah.
so, yeah. Like I'd say that if you don't be afraid, I wouldn't say like load on as much as you can, but don't be afraid to have other things in your life that are important to you that you can do, so that then your golf time is constrained. So whether that's a relationship or if it's a day job or maybe you do some like contracting coding for someone on the side and that you know you do that for 15 hours or you Uber 20 hours. I'm friends with Barry Henson who's on the Asian tour and European tour and Barry when he goes home Ubers. Like he Ubers, yeah, and he makes a lot of money as a golfer. So he doesn't Uber for money. He Ubers just because he wants to do something during the day and he enjoys the conversations and he's like this undercover Uber driver. So um,
What do you do? I'm a professional golfer. It's like, yeah. I had this taxi driver that just lied to me today.
he makes a lot of like Barry. If you can look up his career earnings, he makes a lot of money. He is not hard for money. But that's a good example, I think. So like for me, I have a real job, and Sean Foley gave me a great piece of advice because when I went and saw him, first thing he said is like, Connor Black, I know everything about you. Can't miss, kid. You missed. Now you're here. Something like that. And I was like, yeah. Then he was like, let me say something because I was telling him about my story or whatever. And he's like, um, you have this story of, oh, I was this, I was this, I was this, and now I'm here, and I can't figure out what's going on. And he's like, you need to throw that in the garbage. You're a golf teacher. You're just trying to get better at golf. And then I was like, wow, that's good. Like that's mastery focus. Is like I'm a golf teacher. That's what I do. I want to get really good at that. I want to make my juniors really good. And on the side, I'm trying to get as good at golf as I can. Like that's like what my goal is. So that would be, I'd say, one of my pieces of advice would be like, kind of throw your story in the garbage in some ways. That allows you to be more pragmatic about it and practical, and then try to have some sort of constrained practice time so it's more valuable. And yeah, don't overcomplicate it because it's like if you have any idea of what you're doing, you'll be you'll be beating a lot of people in terms of practice ability. So yeah, that'd be the or practice usability.
I appreciate that. And I think, yeah, key themes pulling out of that are be intentional, what's going to lower your stroke average, and then plan that out and stick to it and just follow the process, even an elite level. Yeah.
Also, keep them in like I got this from you. Keep them in cycles. Like, don't say this is my practice plan forever. Like, no, like say this is my practice plan for 3 weeks. I'm gonna be really intentional for 3 weeks or 6 weeks, and I'm gonna do this my best that I can for 6 weeks because then there's a finish line and you can stick to it. If there's no finish line, it's really hard to stick to things like diets, right? Like you feel like, oh my God, for forever I am going to never be able to eat a French fry again. It becomes very hard to stick to that because then you're just every day lamenting the fact that you'll never have a French fry again in your life. And like, I don't know. To me, I don't think that's the best way. If you know, if it's that's what you're trying to do. So that'd be the advice for them. As far as my advice for people turning that are wanting to play professional that didn't come out with a big contract, um, I'd say it's okay. It is okay to take money from people. I haven't because I haven't felt like I was comfortable enough to spend my own money on it. And if I didn't feel comfortable enough to spend my own money, I should spend others at the moment. But I do foresee that there may be a time where I do. So I don't think it's bad at all to take sponsors' money. And that's how many people make it to the PGA Tour. I'd say that before you do that, make sure that you feel confident enough that you could put 10K on a credit card and feel like, hey, like I've got this. If you don't feel quite there yet, I think self-funding is a really great option for a while. And self-funding achieves two things. One, makes your money very precious because you've earned it. Two, it makes your practice time sparse, which makes it more valuable, and it kind of like constrains you to do things. So I've done the self-funding thing. I'm lucky enough that I my parents have helped me keep the membership that I have at a golf course. So they have been able to pay the monthly bill for that, and I'm very grateful for that. I've tried to take it over. I've brought it up to my dad, and he keeps saying like, "You've got enough on your plate, just let it be." So that's been very very nice. So I have a nice place to practice at and work on my game. But even if I didn't have that, I still have my course that I play at, and I still can go to A&M and practice at A&M. So there's options. You don't have to have a membership anywhere to do this. But yeah, I'd say self-funding. Don't be scared of self-funding, and be very creative with what you can do, because there's a lot of ways to make money. Like Will makes money a lot of ways. Like in a lot of ways, you're a hustler, and you figure out a way to get things done. You have a website, you run ads on your website, you do great amounts of consulting work that you can charge. You've got apps in development.
Finding a way to survive, but similar.
Yeah,
It was like through
yeah,
the
and then you have a coaching job. Like, there's nothing wrong with any
no,
of that.
no.
So yeah, that would be my advice. Don't be afraid of self-funding. You don't have to have some guy that says, I'm going to give you 60K a year that you just spend frivolously. Like,
No, if you're good enough, you will keep earning the money. So if you're good enough to compete at local level, you'll earn a profit, and then you keep reinvesting that. So yeah, that's fine. Look, Ghana, I've taken up like an hour and a half of your time already. Appreciate the chat. You are next off onto your plan, I suppose, with coaching, and then we'll hopefully catch up after Q School, Latin America Q School. Is that what's coming
yeah,
up? What's
yeah,
the date for that one?
that is in November 22nd. If I get the site that I selected, so we'll see.
Awesome. Then finally, where can people find you? So you're a popular man. Even some of my students prefer speaking to you than they speak to me. So if people want to reach out to you, where's the best way to find you?
Your students like to talk to me because they like to make fun of me.
Never, never. But where can people find you?
You can follow me on Instagram at Conoir Black. So Conoir Black. A lot of people wonder if that's how I spell my name. No, it's just Noir because Connor Black was taken, and Noir means black. So it's me trying to be clever. Got that from my friend. He suggested it. And then you can go to my website at www.seriousgolftalk.com. Serious as in like I'm so serious right now.
Not intense.
Yeah, not intense. You used to call me intense, Connor. Hopefully I've leveled off a bit. Have I?
Yeah, you still got intensity. I like it. Don't change it. And then people can book coaching lessons with you. Yeah, where are you based?
Yeah, you can book. You can even book online lessons with me. But because the way it works with my Calendly, you have to book to request it, and then I'll reach out to you, and we can schedule it on our own time. So it's not like you're booking a specific time. It'll show you are, but you're really booking a request for the online lessons. And then if you happen to be in Houston, come swing by. You can see me in person at Wildcat. I'm the lead golf instructor there. Wildcat Golf Club. It's the official golf club of the Houston Rockets and Texans, and it's a really fun place. 36 holes. But come in the fall or the spring, because the summer is like brutal and the winter is actually kind of brutal as well. So yeah.
Hey, look, thank you so much, buddy. Really appreciate your time, and best of luck. Best of luck in the next stretch.
Thanks, Will. Cheers.